Welcome back to Artists and Authors from Central Valley Talk. It is Wednesday morning, the 27th of April. How are we this close to May? I'm Austin Reed. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Austin Reed On Air. We're coming to you from our Tower District studios inside the Mike Briggs building. We thank you for joining us. We've got a couple guests in store for you during the 11 o'clock hour this morning. Let's kick things off, Artists and Authors, with our first guest. This is Joan Newcomb.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
I'll find out whether it's a pleasure or not later.
All right, 8 minutes. In 8 minutes, you'll have to let me know if this was worth it. So tell me, now you're an author, you're a writer, you're a coach, a mentor. Did I leave anything else out?
A teacher.
A teacher?
Mm-hmm.
That's most important right there.
Yes.
So tell me, walk us from the beginning in your life as a writer and teacher.
I'll stick with the writer because it takes too long to do the teacher. I started writing at the end of the fourth grade, and I started with poetry because my mother read poetry to us constantly. We were already memorizing it, and she was a poet. I was absolutely awful. As much as I love poetry and read it, I was absolutely terrible. I quickly found out that other than naughty limericks, I didn't have any talent there. But I've always done stories in my head. As an insomniac in bed, characters talking to each other and all that. So about the fifth grade, definitely the sixth, I started writing things down. But I wrote them down and then put them aside. When I got a typewriter, put them on a typewriter. Then, of course, evolved into the computer. And then I threw them away a year or two later because I knew how they ended. And it wasn't until my sister caught me some years ago throwing them away that she said, "Don't you ever do that again," and she kept them. So I have a few. Now I don't throw them away, but yes. So don't follow me is what I'm telling people out there. Don't throw them away.
Don't do that.
Don't do it.
What did you bring with you today?
Well, I tried to bring us a variety. I have a series, and the artist, by the way, who illustrates is wonderful. This is a series starring Agatha Christie Peabody, the first female agent of the FBI, the Furried, Fanged, and Feathered Bureau of Investigation. However, for readers, don't look at this book and say, "Oh, it's a picture book for my preschoolers or first and second grade." The language and the themes are really for older kids and even adults. Satirical, ironic, and all of that. Great characters, and her drawings are marvelous.
The Case of the Vanishing Eggs.
Oh, all of these, by the way, except for a couple, are Fresno-based. So the first one is at the zoo.
Oh, nice.
So one is at Woodward Park when the dragons infiltrate. So I wanted to do the valley.
That is freaking awesome.
Okay, so that's really...
What age would you say?
Well, the youngest person who's read it was my great niece, who was 7 at the time, and read it. But I would not say that a normal 7-year-old would be reading it.
And would grasp it and understand
and
it.
Like Hanna-Barbera cartoons, the layers of humor, the very broad ones younger kids get, the more subtle ones, like Agatha Ostrich is a specious. She's not a racist. She's specious. She thinks, for example, that the day they started letting canines into the Corps is when the Bureau went downhill. Older kids would get that. So that's this particular series. This one I like a lot. It's set in, again, the Valley, mythical town, smaller town, not Fresno. 1976, the bicentennial, and it deals with bullying, racism, immigration, hate groups. But I don't believe that you teach kids by preaching. You tell a good story, and you hope that kids will start to think of, why is somebody a bully? What does it feel like inside to be rejected? What's it feel like to come to a strange country and try to fit in? So if it's not a good story, it's not worth reading. So I prefer to get messages across, if there is a message, by creative methods rather than preaching. And I tell parents that. Teach it, don't preach it. Okay? So that's the second one. The third one is in a class by itself. she wrote herself, if this makes sense. Her name is Lyda Mae Braithwaite, my mostly true memoirs.
Oh, okay.
Do you notice the emphasis?
Is it-
Mostly true.
Yeah, yeah.
I would warn people who buy the book, if you're a poor speller, do not buy it. She's a terrible speller.
Okay.
At the end of one chapter, I could no longer remember how to spell the word epiphany. She spelled it so many different ways. And my spell check, I didn't know spell check gave up. Halfway through this novel, spell check said, we're done. They didn't highlight anything. She misspelled so many. The first page alone. It's her memoirs from age 12, 1941, December 7th. But it's not about the war. It's about relationships. It's about friendships. It's about bullying. It's about race. Her life experience, the unions and everything else. I love it. I love it. They're not saying that. I love her character. She spoke to me. I sat down one day to write a memoir for a class I was taking from Janice Stevens, and I swear a voice said, "You've written enough of your own memoirs. You need to write mine down." And so I did that, and I took it to class, and I thought it was done. For 10 weeks, every Thursday morning between 9 and 11, she did it. And I said, "I'm through with you. I have my own stuff to do." I put her away for a year. Year later, she came back, and finally I gave up, and I finished her. So, and she will surprise you. If you look at the cover, by the way, it's very untypical. All the grays and stuff. This is poverty. This is poverty. This is tenements. This is the reality of life when you are challenged in that decade and the decades that follow. But the joy and the families, she touches my heart. I hope that doesn't sound like I don't think of her as me.
Yeah.
I think of her as her.
Right.
The last one is an adult romantic comic western set in Wyoming Territory in 1840-something. And again, lots of humor and animals, even though I don't intend them. They just come, like Lyda Mae, they just shove in, even in serious novels, like, with very major themes, kids and animals.
Right.
And in this case, it's loaded with them.
We've got just a couple of minutes left. I wanted to know if you had any advice for writers, new writers.
I thank you, because I work with writers. You can read all the books on writing that you want, and I certainly got them, but didn't read many of them. But every writer has to find his or her own path. Because it works for this person doesn't mean that's the way you need to write. You need to find your voice, your style. And I didn't take any writing. I have a master's in English. I never took a writing class. I do Shakespeare, Chaucer. I learned to write because I'm a reader. And I learned it osmosis or something. Later, I learned terminology for it. But I learned to write by being. So I say to people, read. Don't read to imitate. Read to absorb. Find your own path and your own voice, because it's yours, it's unique. Don't try to be a second-rate whoever is out there. You need to be you as a writer. Find people who will critique your writing and be honest. Don't look for people who tell you, "Oh, it's wonderful, it's great." Doesn't help you as a writer. Doesn't help me. I need you to say, "That character's not convincing, Joan. You didn't hook me in this scene." So I tell people, number one, work to find your own voice. Read, not to imitate, but to absorb. Find people, join a writer's group. Like I have a couple of classes of people who come in, read, and then each other critique.
See, that's great.
And that's where people grow. You don't grow when people are afraid to tell you the truth.
That's right.
Okay, does that make sense?
100%.
Okay.
I want to ask you, where can people, if they're watching today and they're thinking, "Oh, I want to pick up some of these."
They're on Amazon. However, I had to add my middle name or my former name to it because there's a Joan Newcomb in New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
So it's Joan Silveira Newcomb. And if you think you might want one of the books, I think there are about 7 on there now, and then 5 regencies are coming up in the next few weeks. If you will email me and tell me what you like to read, I'll tell you which ones to look at and which ones to avoid.
Perfect.
Don't buy something you're not going to enjoy.
Yeah. What's your email?
Oh, Agatha Ostrich at yahoo.com. And if you do contact me, I don't want to buy solar panels or anything else. So you need to say, Joan, I want to know about your books.
Yeah, no spam. No spam.
Thank you. Please, please.
Great to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate
Come
it.
back
And
anytime,
I survived.
Okay? You survived. Oh, yeah, that's right. 9 minutes later. You're okay?
I'm okay.
All right, good. I'm Austin Reed. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We'll be back soon.